Hey guys, welcome to our webinar today. I'm excited to help bring this to you guys. My name is Sean. I'm going to be helping run this webinar. I'm here with Jeremy Kletke, and we're going to get started in just a minute. If you do me a favor, we got a lot of people joining from different areas of the US. Also, I think we've got several from different areas of the world. So if you wouldn't mind, just let me know that you're here. It helps us. Jeremy and I have been having this conversation for the last couple of weeks, so we're going to have this wonderful conversation whether you guys are here or not, but it always helps to know who's here so we can have fun, we can interact. This is going to be a really great webinar, a lot of information, but we're going to try and keep this pretty informal and fun. So if you guys have questions for me, if you have questions for Jeremy, please post them. So do me a favor, start off, just say hi. Go ahead and say hi in the chat. Let us know that you're here. We're able to see those messages. So we got Ryan here. We got Dale here. For those of you guys, just let me know where you're coming from. So we have Dale, Ombudsman Enterprises. We got Ryan. So great. As you guys are coming in, feel free to just say hi in the chat. And if you guys are watching this on the replay, just let us know because we are happy to interact with you, whether it's live or on the replay as well. And like I said, we're going to get started in just a minute. We always allow for a minute or two. I know you guys all have busy schedules, so we're going to allow for a minute or two for people to come in before we get going with some of the information. But we got Jeff here, John, we got Brian, William, Paul from the Midwest. We got people from the Midwest going in, people from Illinois. Great. So we got a lot of people. North Dakota. Charlie's coming in from North Dakota. So wonderful, because a lot of this not only is going to apply just to the areas where we're at, which I happen to be in the California, Jeremy, Oregon, but Midwest as well. And just really a lot of this is going to apply throughout the different climates, different regions. So it's great to see a lot of people here, especially from the Midwest. So yes, here we got Laura, we got Michael, we got a lot of people joining. Great. So we're going to get started in just a second here. Again, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We are absolutely monitoring the chat. I'm going to step back in just a minute and let Jeremy take over, and he's going to bring a lot of great information, but I will be available. So if you can, my name is Sean, so if you have something, you can just let me know or let Jeremy know. We'll be monitoring the chat as we go through, and we're going to get started. So if you guys are here, you know, you probably have met Jeremy, you've interacted with Jeremy, and if you, those of you that haven't, this is Jeremy Kletke, so the owner and CEO of Davis Hemp Farms, and he has just been a powerhouse in the industry, really just bringing this type of industry into the forefront, but also not just because of what he's doing, but with the education side, working with lawmakers, a ton of great stuff. So this is, I'm going to go ahead and bring him on camera. All right, I think you're already on, but Jeremy Kletke, like I said, owner and CEO of Davis Hemp Farms. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, and welcome everybody. I appreciate everybody showing up. I see some people I know showing up and some people that I haven't met. I appreciate all the guys from Keef Gear coming in today. So those of you that don't know me, my background stems about 30 years in the cannabis and hemp space. I've had the opportunity to work in several countries around the world. I worked with the Swiss government in the late 90s, producing field scale CBD and THC 1-to-1s. So I've been in this game for a very long time. We are known as the primary CBD producer in Oregon, have been for a very long time through the medical industry, and then moved into hemp as opposed to going into recreational cannabis when Oregon started. Developed this breeding program in 2015, put it in the field in 2016, and then have worked on refining it through 17 and 18. Did a seed release in 19, and now here we are in 20 leading up to the season. And that's a big part of why I want to talk to you guys today, is I just feel like we need to get some information out there. We've created some federally compliant genetics. There's been some change in the policy, and I just want to make sure that farmers are successful this year. So that's why we're here today.
All right, so just so you guys know what to expect, we're going to be going over some of not only just the information, we're going to bring up some slides and present some things to you guys, but this is meant to be an interactive webinar, right? This is meant so that we can help answer questions that are pertinent to you. Right, so as we're going through, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll bring them up to Jeremy. If it's something that we're going to cover anyway, I might hold it just a little bit so that we get, because the information might already be brought up, but I'll make sure any questions that you guys have, as long as it's related to this subject and we can bring it up, we'll absolutely bring it up. And you can also, if you have specific questions that you want to be held private, let us know that way. And for those of you guys stay to the end, we have a couple of resources that we're going to be given to you, right? So make sure to stay to the end, because we do have some links that we're going to send out to you. We actually also have some different things that we're going to be sending to you as well. And also those that stay to the end, we're going to give you an opportunity to connect with us, to ask questions one-on-one specifically about your region, your farm and what's going on with you. So those things that you may not be able to ask in here or feel you want to have a little more one-on-one time, those that attended this webinar, we're actually going to have an exclusive link where you can just spend some time with someone from our team for 30 minutes, but you got to stay to the end because I think we're going to be going over a lot of that information. We want to make sure you have some of that as a basis. So when we have that conversation, you're informed, and we can have a really productive conversation about where you're at right now and how to move you forward. So just know that that's coming on. That's kind of the overall as we're going through here. So I'm going to step back. I'll be monitoring the chat. I'm going to let Jeremy present. And like I said, if you have questions, feel free to post them, and I'll bring them up as we're going through.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. First thing I do want to make sure everybody understands, this is the first of 3 educational webinars that we're going to do. So this is a series. We're going to put these up on our website so that you guys can go back and review them. But really, this is about helping farmers to avoid pitfalls in the 2020 season with the new USDA compliance. So we titled this Understanding Total THC Compliance. Let me get the slides going, and we'll start from here. So we will go over the new USDA final interim final rule. We'll go over why genetics will be critical in 2020 and how to protect your investment, because obviously starting out with bad genetics is not going to get you a finished crop. So let me first start by touching on the IFR, because there's a lot of misinformation going around about this new interim final rule. One of the first things that I do want everybody to understand, because we had this comment period that was extended to 60 days from 30, and there was just a lot of debate about, was this a law? Were we, going to see some changes come, and then the law was going to be introduced in, February or March? Well, you can see right here in the highlighted area that the effective date of this rule was October 31st, 2019. And until November 1st, 2021, which is a change that they made, they pulled it back a year for us, we are going to be under this rule. So we are under the current testing requirements of this rule, just to be clear. So if anybody tries to tell you that, this rule has not been implemented, or there may be some change to the testing protocols as far as your 0.3 total THC versus Delta 9, that's just not the case. Second component on this IFR is the crux of this thing, which is about the new testing requirements. So when we talk about total THC versus Delta 9, I'm sure there are a bunch of people in the room that are familiar with the difference. There are some people here from Oregon that have been under Delta 9 testing requirements for several years. A few other states have had the opportunity to participate and get their pilot program going under Delta 9, but there has been a shift. And that shift is to a total THC requirement. So we've only been testing 1/4 of the total THC, just the Delta 9 component. Now we are going to have to test the THCA. So this is critical for you when you're looking at a COA. The reason that we started this webinar is that we see a lot of disinformation going around about certificates of analysis. So the COAs are, being put out there as though they're compliant with clear total THC numbers that are not compliant. So one thing I do want to touch on, if people aren't aware of it, is that the new requirements do state 0.3 total THC. They do allow us to go to a threshold of 0.5 THC before we're now violating the law, essentially. Now, they haven't put down what the penalties are going to be. It hasn't been clear. I'm not sure if it's going to be state to state, but they have made it very clear that if you're above 0.5, it is no longer a Department of Agriculture issue. It is a state police issue. So that's something to be paying very close attention to, because that's a big change. Previously, you would have your crop embargoed and burned if you were above 0.3. Now you have this little window where you're below 0.5 but above 0.3. You are embargoed above 0.5. Your crop will be seized. So I want to be clear about that for everybody. Now, last piece of this is also touching on the total THC. But what it's talking about here, and what's important, I think, for us to understand outside of this highlight, is this measurement of uncertainty. So as you can see here, your you are required to be in that range of 0.3. You are also required to test 15 days pre-harvest. So you have a very narrow harvest window to get your crop out of the field as the cannabinoid content is going up. So that being said, it's important for us to recognize three components about this testing. One, 0.3 threshold is now not Delta 9 only, it is total THC. So it is THC combined with Delta 9. Two, the pre-harvest testing requirement is a 15-day pre-harvest testing requirement. Some states have been 21 or longer, and they've been pretty loose about it. I imagine this year the departments of ag are going to get a little bit tighter about that because they're under a federal mandate. And then the last component of the total THC testing is this measurement of uncertainty. It is important that you guys know that the USDA is not trying to kill hemp. We see that a lot. They're being actually pretty lenient. So we have a margin of error on all of our COAs from the laboratory. So these accredited labs in Oregon, they get a 15% margin of error, which is a little wide, but it's important to reference the margin of error because in this new law, they have actually created a component which they're calling the MOU, or the measurement of uncertainty. So say your measurement of uncertainty from your laboratory is 0.4, excuse me, 0.04. So now you have a test that can be up to a 0.34 and still be compliant with that measurement of uncertainty. So if you're right there on the 0.3 mark for total THC, most states it looks to me like you're going to be just fine. But it looks like above about a 0.3 or 0.34 or 0.35 is where you're going to hit the threshold. So there is the basics of the IFR, and we will have a Q&A here. Oh, sorry, one more slide touching on the 15 days that you guys see right there. So it's important that we all recognize there's no variability there state to state. It's going to be a 15-day pre-harvest test report. Okay, now let's just get right into the crux of why we're here. You know, what we see are a lot of people out there right now, unfortunately, pushing non-compliant genetics onto farmers. And I'm really concerned about it. I think that we need to spread the word about compliance and what compliance looks like in order to avoid almost a disaster this year. I mean, I'm not kidding you when I tell you that 95% of the genetics that I'm seeing online are non-compliant in one way or another. And most of it has to do with total THC. Sean, can you switch me back to the screen and off the slides?
Yep, we'll do.
Okay. All right, so I've got some stuff to go through with you guys here.
Yeah, and as we're doing this, I'm just going to let you guys know that we do absolutely have time. I think Jeremy mentioned this for Q&A. So if you have questions now, go ahead and post them. If you want to take in some of this information, we are absolutely going to have some time to answer some specific questions that come up as it relates specifically to you and what you're doing, right? Because this information is great, but we want to make this that you have things that you can apply directly to what you're doing. They have information to go out to tomorrow, start making decisions that are going to affect you for the rest of the year. So we want to make sure you have plenty of information that's specific to you. So feel free to ask questions. We're having plenty of time for Q&A towards the end.
You bet. And I'm gonna give you a mega download right here. And then you guys can certainly, it's like drinking through a fire hose, but you guys can certainly come back. We're going to give you an opportunity to do Q&A. And then, reach out to me individually if you need. At the end of this, we are going to give an opportunity to schedule a 30-minute call as well. I did want to show you this slide before I get into some of the visual aids that I have here, just so that you guys can understand a little bit about what we're going to go through. These are some of the items that you should be looking for when you're purchasing seed, and you should not be looking, these things should not be looking unprofessional. These things should be from reputable, accredited laboratories and third-party testers. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch back and go through kind of what we're seeing in this space right now. So the first thing that I do want you to look at is I want you to look at kind of one of the things that we're seeing are, the COAs, and they're just not They're just not coming out clean or correct. And so I want to show you some COAs that we find online and kind of give you an idea as to what you want to look for on these things and help you to understand them a little bit better. So here's some that we've pulled offline. And when you're looking at a COA, you're always going to want to be looking at not just the CBD content, which is what these guys are trying to sell you on, but the THC content. I think it's going to become more and more critical this year. But I want to point out to you guys that here's a competitor online. And these guys have put up 3 certificates of analysis. And the first one here is showing you a 0.6 total THC. That's double the legal limit, right? How they can call that compliant, I don't know. And the fact that they're thinking that you guys aren't going to notice this stuff is really, it's disconcerting to me. But, you know, as they're professing this, a 14% CBD ratio, or CBD number, excuse me, they're not expecting you guys to look at this 0.6 number over here. So I'm going to show you all 3 of these and kind of give you an idea as to what's going on. It's the same thing here. This is their second slide. So this is a
and I know some
ultra.
of these people so some of the screens, it might be hard to see these exact numbers. So just just know that you guys can to take in like what he's talking about as far as the exact like the description of the total THC and exactly what he's talking about.
And I'm going to give you guys a link to some of these things, to some of these visual aids that I have. Like I have a document from the Pennsylvania Department of Ag that's their strains of concern. That stuff I can give you a link to. I'm not here to throw our competitors on the bus, so I don't really want to, you know, out these guys. But the bottom line, what I'm trying to show you is this is a company that's come up as reputable. They've put 3 COAs online. The first 2 are, you know, double the legal limit. The last one is noteworthy because what these guys have actually done here, they've actually whited out the THC content, as if a farmer is, you know, so ignorant they're not going to ask at some point what the THC content is. So I just want you guys to be very aware of looking for this total THC content on your COAs, not just a Delta 9 either, because that's another thing that these guys will try to trick you on. And we need to remember that it's total THC now, not just Delta 9. So another side of this, if you guys want to get an idea as to how to determine whether or not these genetics are compliant when you look at just percentages and ratios, okay, on this one, if you can see, they've put 11 to 16% CBDA. Well, there's another variable to this, and that's ratio, CBD to THC ratio. What we find as breeders going through 40,000 iterations is that if we can hit a 30 to 1 CBD to THC ratio, we're doing very well. You know, we see some anomalies that are 32, 34 to 1. I see a lot of our competitors at 24, 25 to 1 consistently, which is really good. Those are good numbers. But when you start taking and dividing the 16% number by 30, you're going to see right away that you're not even close to compliant. So people that are claiming to you that they're going to provide you with 16, 17% CBD, 11, 12% CBD, I ask you to run those ratios. And remember that 30 to 1 number is kind of a mark. And you can look at all of these that have the THC and CBD on them and run that same ratio for yourself. And then I think the more you guys run, the more you're going to start to see that 24, 25 to 1, 30 to 1, these are kind of the standards. And so when you've got a guy that's telling you he's got an 80 to 1 genetic, you need to be concerned. And I'm not going to tell you they don't exist. There may be anomalies out there that exist, and I'd love for those to be found. But I would say that it should raise some concern. And you should be looking at, you know, maybe calling the laboratory or asking them for a few other COAs that'll back that up, back those numbers up. And it's another thing with a 15% margin of error, folks, it's pretty easy to take the same sample, run it 10 times, and come up with a number that works for you. So just keep that in mind.
And then Jeff had mentioned here, can we get you a screenshot of the appropriate COA or license you had up? And you mentioned that we're going to be sending out some information to people as we're going through.
Correct. So I will not provide the link to that these people are claiming the 16%, because I don't want to throw competitors on the bus. I won't do the same with these COAs, you know, hopefully, and ask me questions. If I'm skipping over something that's going to help you guys to identify the hot buttons or the problems, the poison pills in a COA, please let me know. This one, however, that I'm about to go over, which is from the Pennsylvania Department of Ag, that we'll go ahead and put a link up for you guys to access. But this one, we'll move right to it. So this is from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. It is their strains of concern. And the nice thing about Pennsylvania is they've included Kentucky's strains of concern on their list. And I want to bring this up because we're also in a time where a lot of the open source genetics have unfortunately gotten out and been bred. This is a hot time to be breeding seeds. So you've got a ton of fly-by-night operations that have come online, taken some of the few open source genetics that they have access to, and then reverse those to create feminized seed. And those are names that we generally are going to know, like your cherry wine, your berry blossom, your abacus. And I want to go through a few of those with you right now because I keep getting asked about cherry. And cherry is a dangerous strain to run just because of the F2 potential, F3 potential, because of the open sourcing of it. So you're not looking at stable genetics. And I think from a breeding standpoint, before I go through this, what I would want you to say, or what I would want to say from the science side, is that when we talk about generations of breeding hemp for CBD, or just general plant breeding, when we're at a filial 1 or an F1 or a first generation plant, when we've stabilized that plant and we produce offspring from it, it's going to give us a stable version of from clone to seed, from parent to offspring. As soon as we go to F2, F3, F4, F5, these next generations, we start to break down that and pull up some of the recessive traits. And folks, this work takes years. So the idea that we're going to be at an F7 or an F8 where we start to find stability in a year, it's just not there. So if these guys right now aren't, and this is a good thing for you to know, if these guys right now aren't breeding from F1 stock or highly stabilized F2 or F3 stock that they can prove to you that they've worked the lines, then they're offering you something that, you know, is going to have a lot of genetic variability, phenotypic variability in the field. So just keep that in mind. And I'll give you the examples. So,
and I'm going to say, just because I know that when you're holding up, it's a little blurry for a lot of people on the screen. So we actually put the link in here. So you guys can just click on that link from Otakara. And it might be, you can see exactly. So again, just taking the information, if you have a second screen, you can pull it up right now. If you want to wait till afterwards, you will have the same information in that link that was just dropped by Otakara. So you guys can grab that and just go directly to this document if it's easier for you to see in case it's blurry on the screen.
Perfect. And I'll give 5 seconds, 10 seconds here if anybody wants to open the link, but I'm just going to run through some of the names of the strains. And these are going to be names that anybody in the hemp industry is starting to, you know, hear regularly. And I just don't want them to be fooled that a common name is the name that you want to look for in the hemp industry. You need to actually be a little bit more concerned about some of those open source genetics. And so I'll reference the first one I'll talk about here, and you don't need to see these, is abacus. And abacus is one we hear about. It's showing 2 tests above 0.4 in Pennsylvania. So they haven't had a huge program or a bunch of developments. It's not like these guys have years of data. So another one here, we've got cherry. That's got 2 above 0.3 and 1 above 0.4. And when you see this X on the box, if you're looking at it, Pennsylvania variety of concern. They've actually done us a nice thing here, and they've listed Kentucky's varieties of concern too. There are only a few states that have these lists. They're such a valuable tool for us though. But you've got cherry here with tests above 0.3 and 0.4. You've got cherry blossom with tests above 0.3. Cherry wine, a ton of tests above 0.3 and 0.4. We can go on down the list. Lifter, Midwest is another one I hear. Original cherry, Suver Haze, T1, Trump. Those strains, every one of those strains is a strain of concern and has tested hot multiple times in the state of Pennsylvania. It's going to test hot everywhere in the country. It's not just Pennsylvania. So just keep in mind, you know, a lot of what you're seeing out there, it isn't what it is. If you're going to buy those strains, cherry blossom, buy them from the person that bred them. So that's an HGH seed. They're out of Colorado. That's a very reputable company, just like Davis Farms. not here to give my competitors a big pitch, but the bottom line is, look, there are a few of us out there that have taken the time and done the work. And unfortunately, the HGH genetics were just open source. Ours were not open source. Ours is proprietary, so we don't have that kind of exposure and aren't in the position where you're going to find, any of our strains like our Purple Emperor or Painted Lady from some other source quite yet. It's bound to happen. They're good strains, so someone's going to work them. But we do have protections, and the reason we put those protections in place is to protect you from this dilution of the genetics. Okay, the last bit I'll go over as far as COAs is what we do, and I'd love for you guys to use these as a baseline. If your seed producer or provider doesn't have all of this documentation, ask them to get it. This stuff is pretty standard. So I'll just go through these things that you guys should be looking for, and hopefully this will be a good tool for you. So we start out with a data set. So this is just basically an overview of the strain. This is what you find on most people's websites, and that's kind of all you're going to see. This is where you see the claims about, 15%, and so on and so forth. So we're not quite there. We actually show our true data sets and our true data numbers on our info sheets per batch. So that's batch specific. So as a new batch comes out, you'll see new data sets.
And I'm going to jump in just for a sec, Jeremy, because we do have a couple questions. Again, it might be hard for people to see some of that stuff. And so Dale asked that, he said the linked work great and each part. So will each part of this be available for outside viewing? And
these,
so go ahead.
These we will make available to you, Dale, no problem.
Yeah. And so I have a couple things that I'll say is, number one, anything that we think is really necessary for you guys, or if you want to be able to see, one, we'll contact everybody afterwards. Everybody that registered here, we're going to send you an email and say, hey, here's some of the things from the presentation so that you guys have access to that.
And I'm fully aware that you guys aren't going to see every detail of these documents. I just want to run through them and peripherally, and yes, we can make all of these available at anyone's request.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say is for Dale, anybody else that has like specific questions about this, if when we're done here, we're actually going to provide a link where you can schedule a call and we can actually talk about these things and how they affect you, and any other information that you have questions about. That would be a good time too. So know that that's going to be available for you as well. So sorry to jump in before, Jeremy.
No, it's okay, Sean. Thank you, and don't hesitate to ask questions. That's what this is about. We're going to have a good Q&A, but as I'm going through this, I'm not a professional webinar guy. I'm a cannabis guy and I'm a farmer at the end of the day. And so if I miss some stuff in here or I'm too fast, I want to make sure that you guys walk away from this with the tools that you need to make a good educated decision about the seeds that you purchase. So going back to just a basic COA. Now you can see on here, we watermark everything. And the reason is that we are seeing these things taken all the time and used. So another company will take people's COAs and put them up as their own. It's pretty common thing. So disregard the watermark. What you're looking at is a Greenleaf Laboratory COA. This is an accredited lab. You want to make sure that any certificate of analysis from a third-party accredited lab. So that's key. They're state accredited. So there's going to be some oversight there. Going forward, we do comprehensive COAs. So looking at the COAs first, you're always going to be looking at your cannabinoid numbers, and that's going to be critical for you, right? So making sure that your total THC is below 0.3, and that your CBD doesn't look like it's a 40-to-1 or a 50-to-1, because that's something that's pretty suspect if that starts to happen. We also go on hours and do terpenes. So I think as we start to move forward, looking for a comprehensive COA is going to be important. Right now, we're talking about CBD only as a compound for extraction, but as we move forward, the diversity of the plant, we may be tapping into some of these other things. Regardless of the end use of them right now, what I would say is that your terpene content does help you with a couple of things. It's going to help you with frost resistance. It's going to help you with pest resistance. So if you have genetics that are, triple the terpene content to something else, you can pretty much guess that those are going to do a little bit better in the field when it comes to frost or when it comes to pests. A lot of the terpenes, and we can get into a whole hour of terpenes if we want, but a lot of the terpenes are designed to be communication tools for the plant. And I'll give you an example of one terpene in particular that we see has a great benefit against pests, and that's farnesene. So it turns out that farnesene in nature is a chemical signature that's given off by an aphid when it dies. So when a plant starts producing farnesene, and cannabis can produce quite an overunity of farnesene, and so when cannabis starts sending that signal out in the field, you can imagine what an aphid thinks. So obviously the COA is critical, but a COA is going to be probably the most fallible component of this whole thing. So when you're looking at all of these documents, COAs included, please don't hesitate to call the laboratory. Call the laboratory and ask them, hey, do you know this company? Have they tested with you? I can assure you, anybody that we deal with, they know us very well, and they're going to tell you that we've tested hundreds and hundreds of times with them. So that's something to be thinking about. It's just call these guys and don't hesitate to ask about how reputable of a company you're dealing with. Okay, now, next important piece of this. This is a state lab purity and germination result. Now, I think what we're going to start seeing is that this is a standard document for reciprocity from state to state. Most seed producers outside of the hemp and cannabis space have to do a purity test. It's what guarantees that we're not sending noxious weed seed or foreign seed or foreign crop matter into other states. So this is what departments of ag want to see. And most state university seed labs are going to have this ability to do these purity tests and these germ tests. But something that we're seeing a lot of these guys not doing, it's quite cost prohibitive. It takes a fair amount of seed to do it. But it's something that you absolutely want to see, because if you start talking to your state department of ag, they're gonna tell you at some point that, yeah, this is a standard protocol for anybody that wants to send seed into our state, is that they have to run through these purity tests. So you're going to want to look for purity, and you're going to want to look for germ. Now, I encourage you to look for germination tests from a third-party reputable seed lab like this. I see a lot of guys also claiming their own internal germination test. Well, I took 200 seeds, I put them on a paper towel, and 197 of them sprouted, so that's my germination results. I prefer that you guys look at somebody that's reputable and has the experience with doing this, and somebody that you can trust. Third-party data always, and the best third-party data you can find. So in this case, the university does a really good job. And I should brag, our germination tests are all 98 and 99%. I think we have one strain on this last batch that hit 96. The next thing that you'll want to look for is fem rates. So this is another one I see a lot of guys kind of cheating on. And I'm seeing more and more people using medicinal genomics or testing, or using Phylos testing. Those are two pretty reputable companies that are doing this testing, regardless of anybody who's heard about Phylos and their debacles. They do a really good job of fem testing. Now, the fem test that we do, the reason we like Phylos is it turns out that they're also a reflection of stability. When we talk about the hemp plant, stability is a critical component because of the hermaphroditic potential. So the plant being dioecious, it can change sexes just because it feels like it. Sometimes is how I feel. So stability is critical in this. And it turns out that Phylos, anything with a 2% or greater chance of hermaphroditism will show a Y chromosome. So it shows as a male. There's another reason why a lot of the competitors out there will not show their true fem rates from a company like Phylos, is because although they might hit 100 out of 100 feminized seeds, when you put them out in the field, tens of thousands, now you're going to start seeing the hermaphroditic potential, and you're going to start seeing the lack of stability. So with me, what I'd tell you is that finding and identifying the varieties that we have that are Total T compliant and high terpene was a task, but the true 2-year battle was stabilizing those genetics. So just keep that in mind, that all of these new fly-by-night guys probably haven't gone through the work to actually get those genetics stable so that they won't want to twist and become hermaphrodites. For what it's worth, we're seeing about, even though we say 100% on those fem tests, and we're doing a fair amount of slides, I'll talk about that in a second, we're seeing about 1 in 5,000 on the low side, 1 in 9,000 in the high side of true males in the field, and really no hermaphroditic potential at all. So that kind of give you an idea. I think some of our competitors are out there 1 in 3,500, 1 in 4,000. I kind of tell you guys that to me, about 1 in 3,000, anything beyond that, and you're not in a position where you have to rogue plants, you're not in a position where you're going to have to be concerned about pollination at all. That's for large scale farming. so that a guy doesn't have to go out in his 300 acres and try and find the, the 50 males that are out there. 1 in 3,000 is just, it's not an issue. So going back to those sex results, another thing that I'm seeing these guys doing is, 10 sites, 15 sites, and they're telling you that that's feminized. Well, I understand why, because feminization tests are expensive. They're very expensive to do, but in order to get a really good, image of what that percentage is, you need to do a fair amount. So in our case, we're doing, I want to say we do 1,172 per batch. We do 176 per strain. And those will be included in our COA, every site that you can see. So remember that. Don't let these guys doing 10 sites tell you that they're feminized. They need to have you a pretty good cross-section and a pretty good sampling for you to feel comfortable about that. We have pages of them, as you can see here. Yeah, so that's about it, really, is what you want to look for as far as from a reputable seed provider. You've got your COA, you've got your purity tests, you've got your fem tests, and your germ tests. If a company has that, they're generally going to be pretty reliable. But we'll go into a couple other components of what makes what makes a seed compliant.
Yeah, and then obviously
safe.
we have those COAs from our products as well. And so if you guys want to see what we're talking about, this is where we're going to be able to send you what it looks like from our side, so you can see. We work to do a really good job of providing the most data that you can get, right, so that you can make an informed decision. And so those are the things that you should be looking at. So happy to provide those things as you're going forward. I'm going to open it up just for questions right now as we're getting set to move on topics. But if you guys want to go ahead and put questions you have specifically about kind of that certificate, or just some of the things that we looked at right now, this is a good time to go ahead and post them. And we're going to go through. We had a bunch of people online from different areas. We had several people join after we were going. So I'm glad to have you guys all on. And if you missed it when we started, we are going to have not only a Q&A at the end, but we want you, as you're going through, if you have questions, just ask them. We want this to be something that to get the most information to you, so you can make an informed decision for what's going to be, hopefully a highly profitable year for everyone. We want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. So make sure as you're going through, post questions if you have them.
Yep, for sure. And thank you, Sean. So, I would, I guess, before I move on into registrations and licensing, which is the next component we're going to talk about, I would like to talk about, just touch on a little bit about, your pre-harvest test and moving forward to when you actually harvest, and, if you have to move that product forward and potentially endure another batch test. So a lot of what's been happening in the past is we've been able to do a pre-harvest test report. ODA comes out, or Department of Ag comes out. Sorry, I'm in Oregon. Department of Ag comes out, collects a sample, or accredited laboratory comes out and collects a sample, whatever the process may be in your state. That sample is tested. It's either pass or fail, and now you're okay, and you have a green light to harvest. You have a window of harvest. It's been 21, 28. Now it's 15 days that you can get the plants out of the field. But a lot of what is not being talked about is that pre-harvest test report is not 100% representative of what those plants look like when you harvest them or when you process them. So it's important that we all recognize that what we're trying to attain when we're talking about interstate commerce, so it is a 0.3 total THC. So when we talk about interstate commerce, if you're in a state, number one, that has a Delta 9 requirement. So there are a few states that stayed on their pilot program. The USDA allowed that until October 20th of 2020. If you're on one of those states, then your pre-harvest test report could be at a Delta 9 and pass just fine. However, it seems like most of those states have figured out that the problem comes when you want to post-refine, or you want to trim the product at all and ship it out. Now you're changing the potency of that product. So with the case of Oregon, where we've opted to stay on a Delta 9 program till 10/20, what they've done is they've mandated a 30-pound batch test. A lot of farmers aren't seeing that, and a lot of seed producers don't want to tell anybody that, because they're going to tell you that, hey, if you harvest early, you're going to be compliant. But now in Oregon, you take your flower, you trim it, let's say, so you want to have a smokable product, and now you have to have a 30-pound batch test to ship it out of state. So it is changing the potency of the product. That's why they're changing those policies. But even if your state is not mandating that upon you, even if your state's allowing you to do pre-harvest test report, I want everyone to be aware that if you take that pre-harvest test report and it's close to your threshold, and now you're 2 weeks out to your harvest and get all your product down, you're going to want to retest because you're going to be closer to your threshold. And if you're going to trim that product that's right at a 0.3 or do anything, now it's not going to be able to be moved out of state. It's going to have to stay in state on that pre-harvest test report. Anything that's going to go outside of state to be processed or outside of state to be sold is going to be required at time of transport to be federally compliant. So keep that in mind when you hear about all these guys talking about your early testing, and we'll start testing 4 to 5 weeks early to make sure that when you get close to that THC threshold, we're ready to get your pre-harvest test report and get your product down compliant. So just be really careful. I'm not saying 100% that you're going to be beholden to those kind of laws, but just look into your state laws. Think about where you're processing. If you're a guy growing in Montana and you're processing in Tennessee, well, you need your product to be federally compliant across state lines. So just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go ahead and touch on. Do you want to step in, Sean, for a second?
Yeah, I was going to say, I know we're gonna go a couple more things before we open up to Q&A. I know that some of you guys are jumping on and may need to head out in the next 20 minutes or so, and so I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of how to get in touch with us afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and post this now, and you guys can see this. And if you want to schedule a call where you can come on and we can talk specifically about what's going on in your state, what's going on with your farm, what's going on with your plants, we can talk with us here. Davis Farm. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this up in the screen so you guys should be able to see this. And if you want to go ahead and schedule a time where you can go more in depth specifically, I mean, obviously there's a ton of things that you need to be aware of when it comes to all this. If you want to go in, be able to talk a little bit more in depth, I'm going to put this link. You guys can just click that button and go ahead and schedule a time that works for you where we can talk with you one-on-one and find out a little bit more about you and be able to give you some very specific guided advice so you can have an informed decision.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to go on to the other side of this. So what I just showed you was all of the things that you're going to want to see to verify that your genetics are compliant. Now there's another side that people really aren't talking about, and that's what your seed producer needs to be a legal and compliant seed producer and provider in your state. So as you can see on one side of the screen here, we've got our Department of Ag registration. So you're going to want to know that whoever you're buying seed from has this same registration. So if you look here, there's 2 registrations on here. One is for industrial hemp seed, and one is an agricultural hemp seed registration, and one is an industrial hemp handler. You're going to want to look at the various caveats and components to the law in your state. Here, in order for us to move product, in some cases, we have to have that additional handler registration. But it is critical that everyone in your state is a registered and licensed seed producer, or in their state is a registered and licensed seed producer. The other side of this that I think is just seems to be wholly overlooked is that there are requirements for us as a seed producer to be able to sell seed into any state. Now, we are registered in 27 states right now and hold licenses to sell seed. And you can see we put Vermont up here. It looks like Nebraska and West Virginia are the 3 examples that we looked at, but you're going to want to make sure that 1, the guys are registered to produce seed in their state, wherever it may be, and 2, that they're registered to sell seed in your state. Those are 2 things that I think are just wholly overlooked. I'm not seeing very many seed sellers with their state registrations in order to be legal and compliant, and truthfully, there's no other way for your Department of Ag to do their due diligence if these guys are slipping around them and selling seed backdoor. So make sure that these guys are registered to sell seed in your state. Wherever possible, if you guys can get an approved list, or if you can get a strain of concern list, or if your state is on the fence and about to get the program going and doesn't know that they should be doing that, talk to them. Talk to your Department of Ag. That's one thing besides certification that's going to help us avoid a lot of pitfalls in this. Now, I do think that next year we're going to see a lot more certification and registration, so it's even seed certification requirements. So I think some of this is going to disappear, but guys, this year is a crazy year from what we're seeing. We thought that once the law came into effect, so we bred these genetics purposely. In the 2014 Farm Bill, we saw that it was Total T compliance. 2018 Farm Bill again reiterated Total T compliance. We felt like the federal standard was going to come into play. We knew that the Delta 9 testing was kind of subversive, if you will, because the truth is I can grow an 8% THC or a 7% THC strain that has 0.3 Delta 9 THC. So you could really almost grow marijuana under that. So we felt like these laws were going to change, and we knew that we would kind of be at the top of the pile when that happened. What we didn't expect was that all of these people that jumped in, these bandwagon jumpers that came in on the industry this year, would not bow down. I mean, I didn't anticipate that they would step up and try and just push their seed, their illegal seed, onto the marketplace. But I guess I have to understand that when these people made investments and, you know, they produced the seed, that they'd rather be dishonest in some cases, I guess, than lose their asses on it. So I didn't anticipate that, but that's definitely where we are, and that's why we decided to put this webinar series together, is to try and help you guys to be educated. And we're happy to put all of these documents in your hands so that you guys have a baseline. I'm happy to jump on a call with anybody here. These are all people that I care about in this webinar, and I'm happy to jump on a call with anybody and discuss, you know, how to avoid these pitfalls. If there's anything that I missed in here that you guys are, you know, want to bring up, please don't hesitate to bring it up. And you know, I just appreciate you guys all joining, and I hope that I was able to impart at least a little bit of wisdom onto you. You know, I guess the last thing that I would want to go over with you is, you know, and this isn't so critical, but I think it is an indicator of a reputable seed company, is that they have a legal seed label for your state. So a legal seed label should have all of these components. It should have the first four are actually all a component of the purity test: your inert matter, your weed seed, your noxious weeds, and then total purity. And sorry, and so is your other crop. So the first 5 bullet points there. The last 2 bullet points are about your germination rate. So those are going to tell you what you have for germ. And then you should have a lot number. You should have a testing date. You should have a packaging date. And you know what I want you to know is that a reputable seed provider also will have different lot numbers. So, you know, we produce 3 or 4 crops a season, and every one of those crops has a different lot number. All of the analytics for that, you know, crop are associated with that lot number. So there's, you know, no germination rate from another crop that may be different from the one that you're working on. So I just want you guys to know that, and this is a good thing for you to look for and hold, you know, your seed provider accountable regarding this stuff. And I think that's the last slide. So we can probably go into a Q&A now if anybody has any questions that they want to ask me. I guess if they don't, then I did a better job than I thought.
It's a great time to start asking questions, guys. We had a couple that were posted already, so I'm going to bring those up in just a second. But again, ask the questions here. Click the link to go ahead and schedule a one-on-one session where we can just dive in for like 30 minutes and answer questions that are specific to you and your situation. One thing I'd ask is just know that link is for you guys here in the webinar. Like, we tried to make sure that the people here were the people that really needed to be here, and we're providing that for you guys, that link to get to that call. It's not something we're necessarily sharing outside, so just make sure that you're aware of that. And please go ahead and take advantage of that and use that, because we do want to make sure everybody that's here has that opportunity to get that information. We had one question from Michael Edinger, who said he wanted to just go over the formula for Total THC. What he had listed here was Delta 9 plus THCA times 0.877.
0.877. That's correct. That's exactly correct. So that's the formula. It's not pure science, but that is the formula for achieving total THC. Delta 9 plus THCA times 0.877. And most of that conversion is already done. So when you look at your COAs, they've done that conversion for you in most cases, and you'll see it in the subtext somewhere. So when you're looking at a total THC number, it's usually derived that way.
Yeah, and he said that the majority of the people he's spoken with aren't even aware of that formula. So hopefully just that alone can be helpful for you guys as you're going forward.
Well, the good news is that a good accredited lab is going to have it already broken down for you that way. But what's critical is that you are looking for the total THC number, not just that Delta 9. And what I'm seeing now is there's all kinds of ways to manipulate a COA, and you can make that Delta 9 number the prominent number in a lot of cases. So, just make sure you're looking through the subtext. I think on that one I showed you, it's kind of ironic because they whited out the total THC in one place, but over to the right in the column, there it is at 0.62, right? So again, we're all super smart here. This is an industry full of highly intelligent people, farmers that are really forward thinking, looking for opportunities. And I think we need to push these people out of the industry. They don't have a place here. There's been too much, and anybody who's been in the space knows it. There's been too much snake oil. There's been too much nonsense in this space, and it's an incredible opportunity for us to change the world. This is an incredible opportunity for us to make an impact for our children's children. And the only thing that's going to get in the way of that, well, there are several things, don't get me wrong, but one of the big things that get in the way of that is dishonest people preying on other people. So, let's spread this word, let's spread this knowledge, get this out there. This is a simple one. In the next 3 months, if we can just educate people on this IFR, this interim final rule, and how it impacts us and what the difference between total THC and Delta 9 testing is, I think we can avoid a lot of pitfalls, because one thing we can all agree on is that anyone who plants this stuff, it's not an investment. They're losing their crop, and potentially they're at risk of getting in some legal trouble. So let's just stop that from happening. There's no reason it needs to happen. There's a lot of chatter about there not being compliant genetics on the marketplace. I challenge that. We produced enough seed for 13,000 acres this year. It's a drop in the bucket, but there are other great seed producers out there. So there are some people that have been prepared for this and want to provide you guys with the right answer, the right solution to this problem this year.
And then, so I just want to touch on something you talked about, like this. We have this window, right? We have this window now to get this education out there and to bring people to this type of thing. And so I want to make sure that you guys understand that having this knowledge is going to be, just because you're here and having this, and hopefully if you learn something new today, you're even more well armed for this. But it's really going to put you in a space where you're going to have, one, a competitive advantage, but two, you're also going to have knowledge that you can share. Right. So there's two parts to that. And so you just kind of touched on a little bit about how the next couple of months are so important for people to be understanding this and making that decision.
Yep. Well, I guess one of the things that I would say to cap on that is that, we do have, I'm not here to pitch our genetics to you. That's really not what I'm here to do. I'm here to educate. But we do have federally compliant strains in a smokable flower. So, we have varieties out there that are close to 4% terpene content and incredibly palatable, and they're testing at 0.27, 0.26, 0.29 on a trim flower. So with the smokable market being developed, if you guys are looking at smokable, I want you to know that there's flower out there that actually fits that bill. There's certainly biomass out there. There are a number of different companies out there that are putting biomass that will test below 0.3 on the marketplace.
All right, we got a high five here from Ryan, who's saying, I think and agreeing with a lot of this stuff. So we're going to leave it open a few more minutes to take some questions from you guys. Again, please make sure that you understand that we're putting this offer up for you guys to be able to talk a little bit more one-on-one on how you can really be aware of what you're doing this year and get yourself set up right for the next, for this upcoming year to be not only profitable for you, but something that you feel have that safety, knowing like, hey, you understand what's going on. You're not going to be put in that space that's coming out with these new regulations, with this interim final rule. You want to make sure you understand that, because now it becomes more, like you said, it's not just one side of things where is it the crop you can use or not. There's other things going on with this, and the percentages are very clear.
Sure. And as we're here, I want you to know a lot of people have access to me. I mean, I know several people here that have direct access to me on the webinar now, but those of you that don't, I want you to know you do. If you don't feel like you do, you do. You can sign up for that 30-minute call. I'm here. This is my life. This is what this is about. I'm not just here for a year, and one and done. I want to see hemp succeed in our country. I want to see CBD impact people's health. And I know that the only thing that's going to get in the way of that are, bad actors in the space. So just know that you guys all have me as a resource, and don't hesitate to call on me. If I'm not answering the questions here, hit me hard with them. If anybody wants to play the devil's advocate here, feel free. I'd like to expose anything that we're not touching on or anything that people are seeing that maybe they want to understand a little bit better.
I love how CG says educated farmers are better farmers, and that's absolutely what we're trying to do with this webinar series, right?
Yes. Yes.
Aaron's got a question. How often should you test during the growing season, and where on the plant should you sample from?
Okay, well, this is a good question. So the first thing, you want to sample. Sampling is critical because there's new sampling requirements by the USDA on this IFR. The states have been allowed to kind of collect their sample willy-nilly, and now they're defining that, look, it's the apical cola, it's the top flower that they want to pull that sample off of. So if you're going to do any pre-harvest testing of your own, make sure you're taking a representative sample of what the USDA is asking for you. And if you have any questions, just go in the USDA interim final rule, and they'll give you the testing protocols that they're going to mandate to the state testers. Now, that brings up a really interesting point, though, about testing. So, I would cite Dr. Larry Smart. He's a brilliant guy out of Cornell, and he just put a white paper out on the environmental influence on THC. And what they came up with is look, if your genetics are right, you're not going to go hot. They really put it that it's in the genomic sequence. They identified that the THC and CBD ratios are in the genomic sequence, as well as the ability and presence of cannabinoids. So they're dispelling a lot of that idea that you start testing early to watch for your spike. Now that being said, no question about it, as genetics mature and cannabinoid content goes up, so do your CBD and THC numbers as they're getting close to maturity. But I do want to let you know that a good variety is going to be mature below 0.3 THC. And that's really important for you guys to know, because as a cannabis grower, so you're looking for mature product. If you're talking about, the connoisseur market or the smokable market where this is really critical, there is actually a rate of maturity on the trichome heads, or a senescence of the trichome heads, that you're looking for before that determines maturity, right? So we want to take that plant all the way to finish to get the richest compounds that we can, or the greatest compound production out of it that we can. But here's the thing that makes me laugh about this idea of testing early and harvesting early. What we also know as cannabis growers is that the bulk of your weight, your hard weight, comes on in the last 25% of your flowering cycle. So if you have an 8-week flowering cycle in the field, in the last 2 weeks, I'm going to say that 35, 40, 45% of your total hard weight comes on in that last 2 weeks of flowering. And people who know cannabis know this to be true. They know that all that stacking really starts at the end, that density. So if you take that and you talk about pound weight of biomass out of the field, your acre weight, well, you're going to lose 35 to 40% off your total acre weight because you want to harvest early to stay compliant. Be very concerned about people that are selling you that line. Your plant should be able to go to full maturity and not test above 0.3. We have 55 farmers last year, not a single one tested hot. They're all compliant at finish, at harvest, because that's what these plants are supposed to do. They're supposed to finish.
All right, I'm going to give you guys a couple more resources as we're going through. One of the things is if you want to be able to share this information, so we kind of have a smaller synopsis, not the same detail that you got here. We actually just put out a blog post on the Davis Hemp Farm site. So I'm going to put a link to that so you can go there. You can see some of what we're talking about. You can also share that with other people so that they can have some understanding with this too. So I'm going to put that link there, and I'd encourage you to go ahead and comment on that, right? Let us know what you think of it. Send us an email back. Let us know what you think of it. But also, that's a great way to share to others. So I'm going to put a link to that as well.
Great, Sean. And I would also say that we're going to do another one of these on the 30th, a little different subject matter. And then we're going to do a third one, I think, on the 15th. And we'll make sure you guys get those links. But if anyone sees anything that we're not touching on that they really think is a glaring hole, don't hesitate to bring it up, and we'll adjust for this next webinar. Because again, these are all about education. And I want people to be able to share this going forward. please spread this knowledge around. I mean, this is very important. It's so simple, but it's also very important, is we don't want to be sitting here in October, November with a bunch of hot crops being embargoed. And unfortunately, that's what I think a lot of these companies are setting these guys up to. They're setting the farmers up to do.
All right, I think we're going to, I don't see any other further questions here. I know that there's probably going to be questions that come up as you kind of digest this content. So make sure that you go ahead and hit that button to schedule a call right now, especially if you have further questions that are going to be coming up for you, or you want to talk specifically with us to make sure you know what's going on for yours. Also, if you registered for this webinar, we'll be sending out emails to make sure you get the information about the next one. A lot of you went ahead and hit the link to go ahead and schedule for the series. And if that's the case, then you should be all set. If not, we'll make sure to send you information on how to do that. From there, if you guys have questions, feel free to let us know. You can respond to the emails, again, schedule the call, all that kind of stuff. So I think we're going to kind of wrap it up from there, and you guys can find us and connect with us. Paul says, great content, may have additional questions. So he's pushing.
If you do, you know what I'll do is I'll stand here and you guys can stare at my ugly mug for a minute or two. And if you think about it, because I don't want to put any pressure on you, we're here. So I'll sit here for a minute or two if somebody does come up with another question. Other than that, yeah, please schedule a call, reach out to us. We'll talk to you. You know, and whatever we missed on this, please inform us. Let's work as a group to try and get this message out to everybody that we'd like people to be growing compliant hemp this year.
Yeah, and I'm going to make sure that a couple people I think didn't see where that link came up, so I'm going to put it up again. Hopefully that popped up for you again. I'll put the link here in the chat, and just in case it's either I think or those that message me, if you didn't get the link and you want it, I had a couple people ask in the chat. I'm going to send it directly to you if you're unable to see it there. All right, I know that's a lot of information that goes to digest, right? It's like drinking from the fire hose, as he said. So, you know, definitely make sure to take a couple of takeaways from this and know, like, hey, there's information out there. You should be able to get information from who you're getting your seeds from. You should be able to know what those numbers are. They should be able to know what those numbers are and tell you with confidence that they're
any reputable seed provider is going to provide you with every document that I just have shown you there. There's no question about it. But just mostly, I think, going away from this, no, you have a friend. We've been in this space for a very long time. I've seen the space develop. I was a part of writing the legislative component for Oregon's House bill for hemp in 2016. This is not new to me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm in this space. And so please know that if you have a friend in the space, you have a friend out here in Oregon who's been growing hemp for years. I'm, a great farmer's resource. I understand all the implements. I understand, the field management all the way through the harvest. So, any questions that you guys have coming into this, especially we're really focused on the Midwest states. We see 8 or 9 states that are, in my humble opinion, going to lead this thing. Amazing farmers that are coming online this year. And I just started getting a little bit nervous when I saw what was being pitched to them, because of course someone dangles a bright shiny carrot with 14% CBD out in front of you, and you're looking at another guy's 9%. If you don't understand the crux of this, you're growing CBD, you're going to buy into that. So, we all have to really work to educate each other and help to get this off without a hitch this year.
All right, Laura says, thank you, Jeremy. Good info. Paul says, all good from my perspective. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Reggie
Paul.
says, thanks, guys. Well done.
Thanks for coming, Reggie.
Let's see. There was a question about from Nate. Says, do you think they will ever test for Delta 8?
That's an interesting statement. I'm hoping that they don't. I'm hoping that what actually happens is we lean a little further the other direction, that we start to see maybe some federal legalization that takes some of the scrutiny off of 0.3. There's so much medicinal benefit that can be gained from working at 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. So if we include all 4 of those variants in there, I think that'll start to actually work in the wrong direction. But what I will say is I'm going to say that Delta 8 is going to come into light. I think it's going to be a compound that we're going to look at. Will they put it into the caveat that they try to crush us with on that 0.3? I don't think so.
Excellent
Humble
question.
opinion though. Yeah, great question. Great question.
All right. So again, we're going to list some resources for you guys. We'll send them out. Everybody that's registered here, we'll send it out to your email, some resources, the links to make sure you're set for the next couple of webinars. Again, if you know someone that would really use this information, definitely let them know so we can get this information to them. And also, this is your chance to be that resource for them to share and let them know they have a resource with us as well.
Yeah, and I guess at the end of the webinar pitch for us, we do have seed. We have seed available. It's compliant seed. I think we have some of the best seed on the market, and all of the analytics that we have will back that up.
Yeah, all the things that we talked about today that you need to look for, obviously, we are making sure that we have those for you. And so that you can look and see the product that you're getting, so that you can know that you're getting the right thing, that you can know that it's been tested, and that you know like how to be able to have an informed decision. Again, that's the best way to make these. This involves your livelihood. This involves what you're doing. You want to make sure that you have the information so you can say, yes, I made this decision based off of actual factual data and not just what someone told me. So you have to have that understanding, and that's the type of thing that we're providing to anybody that's coming to us for seed as well.
Well, and Sean Trick brings something right to mind too. Factual data is critical. That's what this is all based upon. However, you should know a little bit about your producer. We produce from pest pathogen and virus-free F1 mother stock, and we open the door to people to come out here. Now, we're real careful about where they've been, but we open the door for people to come out here and take a look, because I want you to know that your seed is produced from healthy plants. I learned a couple of years ago, I used to say to people that pathogens and viruses are highly intelligent and can likely embed the predisposition for that into the genomic sequence of a seed. I didn't believe that an illness could actually get into the seed and then spread from there. However, I've been educated, and we've had a problem here in Central Oregon 20 some odd years ago with verticillium wilt. It killed our mint industry. And, I've learned that that wilt can actually embed itself in the genomic sequence of the seed. So what I'm getting at is that how your seed producer produces seed, how professional they are, how clean they are, has a huge impact on your decision as well. We saw NOCO, I think, post a sponsor post of a mother room from one of their sponsors, and I just thought, wow, that's like the darkest black market room that I've seen in a long time. I would never want any of my farmers to be buying product from there, because I don't know what viruses and pathogens or pests that guy's working with. So I think that's another thing, is just know that your producer's clean. Know that they're professional, reputable. They didn't just come online and start doing this in a garage last year. And I guess lastly, be really worried about 25-cent seed. Be really worried in this market right now, where we've been holding at $1 a seed. The guys that are coming in and trying to race to the bottom, there's a reason for that. Their cost of production is far lower than somebody like us. We put all the time, energy, and resources out there to make a good product for you to put into your field.
All right. So I think that if we don't have any other questions, we go ahead and wrap up. And then again, just make sure that you guys are listed for the next one. We'll make sure to get information for you. And then any last words, Jeremy?
No, just thank you. I appreciate you guys all taking the time out of your day. We're all super busy, so I appreciate everybody jumping on and listening to me speak and looking at my funny mug for a little bit. And hopefully you all come back on the 30th, and maybe between now and then we can, come up with some more topics that we'd like to touch on. And again, we're just here to help you guys avoid a catastrophe in 2020 that really it shouldn't even be an option. I mean, these guys shouldn't be pushing this seed, but the fact that it's become so predominant in the industry, we felt that we needed to step up and offer a little education. So thank you all for listening.
All right, take care, and we'll see you guys in the next event.